there's lots of things that we care about in the NHS which we're very proud of and we continue to do well. But the list of things that you swear about was getting increasingly big, and I just thought that we have to do something about this now. So when I set up HarleyDoc, it was very much to bring back that old model of healthcare where you know your doctor and your doctor knows you, but inject it and modernize it with as much AI and tech as we could. Anyway, to cut a long story short, I ended up getting diagnosed with advanced bowel cancer. But the reason why I mention it is because at a very early stage in my career, I saw what it was like to be a patient as well as what it was like to be a doctor.
What it is that you're building, not only being a business that I think is genius, but it's actually revolutionary to your space and can impact so many people's lives in a positive way.
Story I told you, I was looked after when I had cancer fully by the NHS, and my dad had 3 strokes and the NHS saved him. So I'm very passionate about what the NHS does, but I do feel that we need to have an open and honest conversation about bits of it that are working well and bits of it that aren't working well. We've got now the offices here in London and Harley Street, Dubai, Monaco. We're opening in Mumbai later next year. Just had a meeting last week with Hong Kong. We've just signed a contract to partner with a group of clinics in America across both coasts. So New York, the Hamptons, I think Washington, Miami, LA, Santa Barbara. So it means that where a lot of kind of people go for holidays or have their second home, that we can care for them as well. So
you mentioned that you're looking at moving into working now with governments. How do you even get into the position to be able to have these conversations?
People are spending money they haven't got to buy things they don't need to impress people they don't know. That's just bonkers.
What are some of the top health tips that you could give to people at home to maybe improve their health instantly, something that they could start tomorrow?
To me, one of the biggest ones, and the thing that most of us get wrong, is...
Hey guys, welcome back to the Gooms Podcast. Today we sat down with Tony, the founder of HarleyDoc, and we spoke about how he's revolutionizing healthcare worldwide, dealing with cancer at the age of 23, the flaws in the NHS, and much more. Thank you for all the continued support on the podcast. Me and Chris really appreciate it. Make sure that you hit the subscribe button or follow us on Spotify, like the video, and enjoy the episode.
What flaws did you see in the NHS that inspired you and motivated you to start your own clinic?
Do you know what, Chris? I've been a doctor since 2002. That's when I qualified. And how you see the NHS now isn't the NHS that I came into as a junior doctor. You had to work hard, but obviously you went into it and there was a reward, which was seeing people get better. And I think that there was just a mutual trust that you kind of trusted the doctor to be there for you when you needed them, and that the patients would come and see you when they needed you. And I feel like what happened over a period of time is that the NHS has just got less and less resourced. It's got increasingly muddled up with the kind of government policy, and it feels like people just use it as a bit of a kind of hot potato when it comes to election time, and the actual care isn't there anymore. I don't think anyone's not working hard. I don't think it's a question of that. But I'll give you a couple of examples. Like I remember seeing a guy who was in his 60s, and he came in with a tremor, so he was like this, shaking. And I thought to myself, this guy's got probably Parkinson's disease. So I thought, let me get him referred. So I sent him as an urgent referral to the hospital. It was one of the ones in central London. And they rejected the referral. They said, oh, it's not an urgent referral, send it as a routine. And there was a 14-month waiting list for him to see a specialist. And I just thought, if that was my dad, what would I think of that? And I'd be absolutely horrified, So for me, it got to a stage where I feel that, is this a system we can any longer be proud of? We're all proud of the NHS. It doesn't mean that it can't improve. You guys are in business, I'm in business. And I think one of the things that you always realize is that you can't run a business on just goodwill. At some point, there has to be something else that comes into it. So, I think it's not one event that happened. It was a sequence of things that made me realize that there's some really ill people out there. There are people who know how to play the system and get to see the doctor the same day, but the vast majority of people don't. So you see a lot of people sitting on their symptoms, not knowing what to do, eventually coming in when it's too late, feeling embarrassed about the symptoms. And that's, the situation. While I think I'm a very good doctor, you shouldn't be waiting 6 weeks to see me for a routine problem. I don't think that's a good quality of care. So that's when, the kind of seed was sown for setting something up privately. But I think that was probably it. I think it was just generally looking around myself and feeling that this is no longer a system that I feel is working for my patients. And I think it came to a head one Christmas. I was sat there with my family, and my mum and dad just said, oh, you look a bit, sad, what's up? And I just said, I don't think I'm really enjoying work anymore. And I've been in the same practice for 7 or 8 years. And I love my work. You know, you guys love your work. I love my work. And I feel like it's something which you spend so much of your day doing. You have to enjoy it at least.
Yeah, 100%.
And it just got to that stage where I felt that, I'm not really enjoying this anymore. So I'd already started doing some private work, and then it was an easy transition to kind of carry on.
To somebody that doesn't know you and doesn't know what it is that you've actually built, can you explain what HarleyDoc is and how that basically comes into play with what you've just said?
Yeah, sure. So, I've been a doctor since 2002. I've been a GP since 2006. I chose that industry because I felt like I wanted to get to know my patients, and I wanted to be their first port of call whenever they were ill. So it might be something trivial, it might be something serious, it might be when they've had an accident, it might be when they're going through a marriage breakup, whatever it might be. I felt that the GP role was the one that was probably the most suitable for me. My father is a retired GP. My younger brother's GP, my older brother's a hospital medic, but we kind of very much have medicine in our kind of DNA. And I felt that model of general practice that I came into, where you know your doctor knows you, that familiarity, you probably remember it from when you were young, that your granddad, your dad, all had the same doctor, and it just counts for a lot, because that familiarity means that whenever you're seeing somebody, you're never starting from scratch.
It's a personal touch as well, right?
Yeah, I think
it makes a difference.
It's almost, don't get me wrong, there is some competency as well, but it's about customer service, and if you know the person, it makes customer service a lot easier. And because of that slippage, like from what it used to be to how it was, where, you were lucky to see a doctor, now with the diversification of, the kind of staff you're seeing, pharmacists, nurse prescribers, physician associates, and everyone's got their role, and everyone's welcome to do that. But I think that when you need to see a doctor, you need to see a doctor. You don't need to see somebody who's not a doctor. And it got to the stage where I think people were struggling to see me as their doctor. And if they do get to see a doctor, then they don't see the same one twice. So when we went into the private setting, if you think that over the years, there's lots of things that we care about, in the NHS, which we're very proud of and we continue to do well. But the list of things that you swear about was getting increasingly big. And I just thought that we have to do something about this now. So when I set up HarleyDoc, it was very much to bring back that old model of healthcare where you know your doctor and your doctor knows you. So there's always familiarity of service. But inject it and modernize it with as much AI and tech as we could. So we wanted to bring that healthcare offering, which hasn't changed for 50 years, really into the modern era. So that's what we've done. We also recognize that people aren't ill between 9 a.m. and 5 p.m., 6 p.m. when your doctors are open. People are ill 24 hours of the day. So we've set up the service to offer 24/7, 365 care to our clients, and it means that they can contact the doctor wherever they are in the world, whenever they want to. We realise that nowadays people might be London-based, but they might have a country home. They might live, have a place in Dubai, have a place in Cyprus, and so it was really important for us to make sure that those people were well looked after. Because you wouldn't believe this. I mean, my clinic was in Vauxhall, where I was working, so that saw a huge amount of change with the Battersea Power Station development, 9 Elms, the US Embassy came there. And it got to a stage where I was seeing people, and let's say I saw 15 or 20 patients in the morning. Every single person was from a different nationality, but everyone was quite well resourced in the sense that they were, successful. They were living in a posh part of London. They had multiple homes around the world, and their idea of healthcare was to get 6 months of medication from us and then just go to Cyprus, and then we wouldn't be able to get hold of them. And if they were ill, they'd fly back to London, which for me was just like, that just seems such a remarkably poor level of healthcare. So we really wanted to be that kind of first port of call wherever the patient is, and that's what we've created with HarleyDoc. So we call ourselves a global healthcare concierge service because it's literally what we do. Wherever you go.
It's brilliant, by the way.
Thank you.
Every time we've spoken, I'm more amazed about the product and the service.
Thank you so much, man. Yeah. It means a lot, because I think that the thought that's gone into it is really it didn't just happen overnight. It's like 20 years of, mistakes, things that you see that could have been done better. And we feel like with our private offering, we've really tried to create something quite special with it. And that personal touch is the most important thing, as you rightly said. And I feel like if you've got that now, wherever you travel in the world, then it means that you can get hold of the person when you need them the most. You can see the person who knows you best, and I think that's the most important part of it.
So to somebody that's listening at home, what actually is HarleyDoc? How do you explain what it is?
Yeah. So, I'd say that it's your kind of go-to first port of call for anything medical or healthcare related. So we offer a hub and spoke service. So if you're the client and I'm your doctor, you can get hold of me, any time of night or day. You can send in queries. You can send in, photos of a new mole that you've found. And we can, immediately try and sort that problem out for you. So it's a very responsive, reactive way of healthcare.
And this can be done by your phone, right? In bed. You don't have to call the GP and sit on hold. You don't have to go into your local GP. You don't, it's just open your phone, your dashboard, your app. These are my symptoms. This is what's happened. Send,
exactly.
And your team has it, right?
Exactly. So this is how it started. So we were web based, up until kind of early 2020s, and then I saw that there was a piece of the puzzle missing, which was an app. So we spent the last 2 years really going to town on creating, an app. So our HarleyDoc app is on all platforms, and it's a real-time interface between doctor and patient. We offer a membership model, so it's by kind of invitation at the moment, but we're looking at a more mass market approach. But essentially the app is, your real-time interface. So whenever you need the doctor, you can contact them. But it's more than that. It's an AI-generated symptom triage system. It's an appointment booking system. It's your medical records. It's got a prescribing platform on it. So, we offer, if you like, an Uber of kind of pharmacy. So let's just say that you're, in central London, but you're flying from Heathrow tonight and you left your medications at home. You can just request the medication and the courier can meet you at Heathrow Airport and give you your medication. So it's kind of finding those little problems that we found and trying to correct them. And I feel like, that's the best way to start a business, is to, generate the business out of the need. On top of that, what we've done is we've got a patient hub. So we don't just want to see patients whenever, for like trivial things. We feel like there's a great deal of education that needs to happen with patients. So we've set up a patient hub whereby, it's like a YouTube meets TikTok, where there's going to be like a repository of 1-minute videos. So if you wake up today and you've got a sore throat, do I need to see a doctor or do I not? Well, there's a 1-minute video that will tell you what you need to do. And of course, we also have our facial scan tech. So the beauty of this is that just from a 30-second scan under the light of your phone, we can extract so much data from it, and we can check your blood pressure, your pulse, your cardiac workload. We can look at your risk factors. So this is another.
How accurate are those numbers, though?
Literally just wondering that.
Yeah, they are actually very accurate. So it's a technology which has been tried on a data set of 10 million, and every metric that we have now is over 95% accurate. Obviously, the better the conditions, the better the scan results. And what we're really keen to do is to raise people's health awareness. We're not trying to make people health anxious. I think there's a big difference in that. And I think we all probably felt that over lockdown, that there was a kind of shift in the way that our minds were working. I felt it myself. I felt like, we're working really hard. I'm not feeling great. Everyone around me is, either kind of ill or getting ill. And it was a very kind of, anxiety-inducing time. And if you think, I know you guys don't live in London, but when you live in London, everyone's got small flats, staring at the same four walls if they live by themselves, and it's quite a lonely place to be when you haven't got that network around you. So for me, it was a really important thing to address the kind of health anxiety that people have with this. So we can kind of, we do an onboarding consultation with our clients to understand what their needs are, what their background is, what they will need from us moving forwards, and we make sure that we can offer exactly what they need. So it's very bespoke, but very comprehensive at the same time.
What are some of the problems that you faced trying to build essentially a SaaS software for medicine?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard. And I think, again, it's something that you have to do when you've got a bit of experience under your belt, because I think at the start of my career, I would have thought I could do it, but it's only time which has taught me the things that patients want and the things that patients need. I guess one of the things which I've not mentioned is that when I was 23, I was very ill. So I was working as a junior doctor in Yorkshire, where I'm from. And I ended up basically having a period where I just wasn't feeling very well, losing a lot of weight. my kind of abdomen wasn't right, just felt that, you know, I was going to the toilet a lot and just didn't feel myself. Anyway, to cut a long story short, I ended up getting diagnosed with advanced bowel cancer. And so needed to have chemotherapy, radiotherapy, multiple operations. But the reason why I mention it is because at a very early stage in my career, I saw what it was like to be a patient as well as what it was like to be a doctor. So I think the main thing, and I hope that most doctors do it, but is to recognize that the patient's actually the center of everything that you do. It's not really about me. And if I need to stay later, then I can stay later. So, you know, if you have that experience from a young age, then it means that whatever you build later on will have the patient at the center of it. So I thought to myself when I was building the app, what is it that a patient needs the most? And it's to have a point of contact that they can go to for whatever symptom they have. And, you know, as guys, we're often quite late to go and see our doctors about stuff. And, you know, the way we encourage patients is that if you feel like it's an issue, you're best off getting a consultation, nipping it in the bud. The worst case scenario is that we reassure you that there's nothing to worry about, you know, and that's always, you know, going to be a good place to start. So the problems that we've had were kind of focused around, first of all, focus on what the patient wants, not what the doctor wants or needs or thinks that the patient wants. So when we did that, we kind of sat down and put together a kind of, you know, I think we all live off these lists now, but I had just list after list after list of, you know, kind of factors that we had to take into consideration. So it was time constraints, different time zones. People now travel so much more, whether it's with work, whether it's for leisure. So we have to make sure that we can do a deep dive into wherever you're going. So if we take the example of, you know, kind of Dubai, you know, when people go there, they don't know how to access healthcare. So what we'll do is we'll find out where you're staying, where your hotel is, where your second home is, find your local pharmacy, local clinic, local hospital, and we'll make sure that we make ties with those people so that if you do, God forbid, need any help or assistance medically, then we know what to do for it. So
that's amazing, man.
Is that automated?
All automated, yeah. And
come on, man, don't doubt Big Tony.
Exactly.
I'm just curious.
No.
Because I was going to say, like, imagine, let's say, if you built the app up to 1 million users. Obviously, I don't know where you're at, but that would be a pretty big bottleneck.
Yeah. So again, what we realize is we have to start small. So, you know, it was all new to me when I started it. So, you know, when you're starting off with 0 patients, it's actually a good place to start from, because you realize that every patient that you get on board understands the concept. They recognize the value in what we're offering, and then they give us the best feedback. And also that word of mouth that, you know, if you like it, then you'll tell your friend, who'll tell his girlfriend, who'll tell their mum and dad, and then suddenly you start looking after families. And that really is how family medicine should be, you know. So yeah, these are things which we, you know, we didn't know when we were starting it. But if you imagine our app started from scratch, we haven't borrowed anybody's tech for it. So it's just a series of building blocks, and the beauty of it is that it's entirely customizable. So the pharmacy and the prescribing platform that I told you about that works in London, we can take that off and just add another one for Dubai when it goes to Dubai. So it makes it a very kind of versatile bit of kit. But the premise is very simple. It's, you know, it's like a kind of a way of you communicating with your doctor whenever you need them. And so it's fundamentally communications, but in there is also all the other things that I mentioned. And I think the kind of thing which most people are drawn to is the facial scan app, because it's such amazing technology that we're using to extract that data. We're not trying to say that this should replace the doctor-patient face-to-face consultation, but if you imagine if you're sat on the other side of the world and you're worried about your health, and just from a scan of your face, you can, you know, pull out all of these metrics. I think it's a really good thing to be able to start a consultation with.
I feel like that's something that I'd be sitting there daily doing it.
I know. So this is what we obviously want people to do it, of course, but I think that, you know, doing it kind of several times a day is something that we try to tell people to avoid, because then what you tend to find is that you'll see little changes in metrics. There's an odd thing that we do in medicine, and I'm sure, you know, if not for you guys, maybe your kind of relatives have had it. So things like high blood pressure. You know, over a period of time, we all get high blood pressure. And at certain times of day, it might be when you're rushing, it might be when you're under pressure, it might be when you're waiting to see a doctor. And what we do is we get people from the comfort of the home, we get them to come into our waiting room. You've rushed to come here. I've kept you waiting for half an hour, so you're probably seething. And then when I do eventually see you, we take your blood pressure. Guess what? It's sky high. And based on that, we start you off on medication. And then we say, come back in a week's time, come back in 4 weeks' time. It doesn't make sense. That model just doesn't make sense. And I think that, you know, even all the kind of blood pressure monitoring at home that we do, that's the true reflection of what someone's blood pressure is. And so with our app, because you can do the blood pressure from that scan, it means that there's another metric that we can, use to measure people's wellness at home. And also, we're not just looking at kind of physical symptoms, which I know is what a lot of people think medicine is, but it's actually now more about the kind of wellness of the whole person. So more of a holistic approach. So you're looking at me from my physical side, but also mental, emotional, sexual, whatever side it is that people need help with. We're in a place that we can offer it.
You spoke about medicating someone, like let's say, obviously your examples, high blood pressure. I feel like that's a bit of a problem when it comes to just like a general doctor nowadays. So for instance, let's say if I went to the doctor and I quote unquote had depression, one of the options would be to medicate me rather than telling me to start, I don't know, taking a 20-minute walk a day or start looking after what I ate a little bit more, for example.
Yeah, I think that's a really valid point. And, when I look at the kind of doctors who are a little bit older, who maybe look at my dad, my dad's approaching 80 and he came in 72 and was a GP for 40 years. If you look at the work that they did, it was in a very different space to what we're in now. Psychiatry still existed, of course, it's always existed, but people were much less open about talking about their kind of mental health. So taking that as an example, I think I don't necessarily blame the doctors from that generation, because if it's not something which is well researched or well discussed, then there is that kind of I'm a man, I can handle depression type thing. And one of the great things about, I think, your generation and younger is that people are very encouraged to talk about, all the symptoms now. But with that comes a problem, because there are lots of people out there, whether it's on social media, who are saying, talk about your mental health, talk about your mental health. If you talk to someone about your mental health and they don't do anything about it, then what I feel happens to a lot of guys is that the mask slips and there isn't anybody to help them pick that back up again. So it's almost like if you're going to lay yourself open, you have to make sure that the support is there to deal with that. Like there's no point in me telling you that I'm feeling suicidal if you then just forget about that from the 10 minutes that we see each other and move on. And so I think, yes, I think it's all about health awareness, but it's about knowing who to go to in your kind of time of need as well. So we think that the continuity of care is very important with that, because if somebody comes in at their most fragile, and I've had patients who have been at that stage, continuity is key, because if we've come up with a management plan together and I say, right, I'm going to speak to you in a week's time, and then you see somebody else, I think that's a really, really poor quality of care, me personally. I think people accept it because it's the NHS, and everything now feels very light touch. So it's like, call this number, get yourself some counselling and therapy. But actually what's most important is that you get the choice of which counsellor and therapist suits you. It might be that, for instance, as guys, particularly about men's health issues, we don't often like talking to female patients about it. I think it's changing, but historically, people would like rather see somebody of a similar age or perhaps a bit older, or somebody who's got a bit more experience. And unfortunately, the way that the current talking therapy service works in the NHS, you can be talking to somebody who has no idea what you're going through. And I think that's a flaw in the system, really.
You spoke about overall wellness. What was the transition from GP to business owner like for you?
Yeah, it was stepwise. So, I always say that nobody chooses medicine because they love risk. It's quite a safe pair of hands in terms of a career. You have to work hard to get there, but, they say it's a job for life. The pension's really good. And so when you're starting off thinking outside of the NHS, you're petrified because you've been told that you're going to be doing this for 40 years, you'll make a good income, you'll be able to support your family and all this kind of thing. And the truth is that when that happens, when you start to think, okay, I need to leave now, you have to do it stepwise. I don't know many people who've successfully just suddenly dropped NHS on one day and started a private practice from the next. So I actually did it in that way. So let's just say that I started at the top kind of with 100% NHS work. Then I gradually kind of chipped away at the NHS and lifted up the private work. So my original business in the late 2010s was set up to do private general practice, but also aesthetics and skin surgery. So your lumps and bumps, if you watch things like Dr. Pimple Popper on TV, those kind of things.
Weirdly
some people
satisfying, right?
Yeah, some people find it gross. I always found it very interesting and instant kind of relief for the patient. You know, if they've had a cyst which has been bothering them, or a fatty lump, a lipoma which has been bothering them, when you take it off, it's instantly relieves their symptom. And so I always quite like that. So that's how I did it. I did it kind of gradually. And then when I decided to go fully into the private sector, that was a big step, because you kind of become dependent on, the way that I saw it was, okay, if I can do enough NHS work that pays the bills, you know, then everything else is a bonus, and I'll just keep that within the business. I never really drew an income from that. And then when you eventually drop the NHS work, you realize that, okay, this is it now, and you have to do it. So business doesn't come easy to me, and I feel like I'm still learning, you know, a lot. And I think we spoke, you know, when the other day about it. So I've got an idea for a podcast which we're setting up called The Accidental Businessman, which I'd love to have you guys on. And, you know, I feel like some of us are not naturally business people, but you have to learn how to do it. And so there's quite a humorous kind of element to it, I think, that, you know, some of the kind of trips and fails that you have on the way to become a businessman are really interesting. And you don't become a good businessman if you don't have those trips and falls. And, you know, I've known people from when I was younger who were just really thrifty. You know, they'd be kind of selling Ralph Lauren shirts at school and this kind of stuff. And that was never me at all. I never really understood, you know, how people even could get their minds around that. And now I've got into that situation where business has become second nature to me. You know, definitely not the finished article, but I feel like, you know, I've got to a stage where I've built something up, and, you know, the sky's the limit if we want to take it there.
I feel like it helps because what you're doing is very purpose driven as well. We've spoken briefly beforehand about what it is that you're building, not only being a business that I think is genius, but it's actually revolutionary to your space and can impact so many people's lives in a positive way. That's got to make you feel a type of way, right?
Yeah, again, you know, thanks for the words, man. I mean, it means a lot, because this is the feedback that we get from the people that we show it to and from our members, certainly. And I just think that, you know, we're in a position where we can really, really do something special with it. I think changing people's hearts and minds about the NHS is quite challenging. People are very emotive about it. The story I told you, I was looked after when I had cancer fully by the NHS, and, you know, my dad had 3 strokes and the NHS saved him. So I'm very passionate about what the NHS does, but I do feel that we need to have an open and honest conversation about bits of it that are working well and bits of it that aren't working well. And I feel that those of us who can afford to have private healthcare, you know, number one, it's a good thing to have. You know, I think that you get to see a specialist whenever you want to. You get this kind of reactiveness of care, which is what I think healthcare should be all about. But it also frees up the resources of the NHS for the people that need it the most. I could lose everything tomorrow, and next year I need the NHS, you know, and I like to think that the NHS would be there to look after me for when I need it. But those of us that don't, you know, I think having a private option, you know, is a good one at the moment. We want to be affordable, so we've never kind of gone to the tens of thousands of pounds for membership. We like to keep ourselves competitively priced. I don't think good healthcare needs to be expensive. Of course, we need to cover our costs. We need to make a little bit, but I think that generally speaking, if you offer something which is competitively priced, people respect it and people are drawn to it, and you get more recommendation by word of mouth. I think that's as good as anything. I
want to pull it back. You obviously touched on the fact that you got cancer. We've spoken before, and you've told me that it was around my age when you fell ill. What was it that got you through that? And is there any part of that you still hold on to today that make you the man that you are today?
Do you know what, man? So much. I obviously I remember being at school. I remember playing rugby. I remember being at uni, and I remember starting a job as a junior doctor. And then I got ill. So let's say I started work in I think it was the February, and then by the July I was diagnosed. And it just is, you know, we talked earlier about our interest in sport. So, you know, boxing is something which I've always loved, and it just felt like a sucker punch, you know, like literally when somebody's hit you and it takes the wind out of your sails, like it just felt like everything stopped on that day. And I was always very positive, you know, I've always been very positive. So from that day onwards, when I was told that I had cancer, I had no doubt that I'd be around and that there was some sort of a bigger purpose, if you like, to what I was going to do in life. But it's weird because being 23, being told you've got advanced bowel cancer, there isn't really a rule book. There's no playbook to kind of say that this is what happens. We have stats that say that X% of people will be dead within 5 years. And, that's why people talk about a 5-year survival after cancer. But what's strange for me is that I remember everything before cancer, but it's got that kind of dreamy haze to it, like almost like I was there, but I wasn't really there. And I feel like cancer, in a perverse way, has given me a lease of life, which I probably didn't have, or an appreciation of life, which I didn't really have before that. And so, it kind of totally devastates your family. Like mum and dad have probably never been the same since. Both my brothers had affected. My, kind of ex-girlfriend at the time, it ended up causing us to break up. And there's all sorts of, kind of factors that play into it. And so you kind of look back at it with a kind of weird fondness that it's made me who I am today, but also the fact that a lot of things have changed as a result of that in other people's lives. At the time, I remember thinking, because this is all you think about when you're 23, is that I'm okay, therefore everybody else around me is okay. And the truth is, I think that sometimes we need to explore that a little bit further, because I don't think that anybody can really cope. It's like the opposite way around. Like your parents are supposed to die and then you're supposed to die. But if you're supposed to die before your parents, it totally changes, that kind of mortality, question that people have in their heads. So, I think that I always, have always been an eternal optimist. And so I feel that, out of everything bad, there has to be something good. And that, whether you believe in God, whether you believe in some sort of other power, that I think that this happens to people who can handle it. And the way that I kind of justified it in my head is that if it hadn't happened to me, then it could have happened to somebody who I care about, and they may not have been able to deal with it. So I just went through the motions, I didn't really do anything special or spectacular. I just dealt with it in the way that my personality allows me to deal with things. I think that being a doctor and having that side to your story, which means that you can sit with a patient who's just been diagnosed with cancer and say, hey, I've actually been there and I'm still here 20 years on. I mean, that's probably more powerful than most things that you can say, right?
Yeah. Was there anything that time taught you about yourself that maybe you didn't know before?
I think I always thought I had a resilience. I'm from quite a big family of, like men. So, like I said, I'm the middle of 3 brothers. My dad's a doctor. Ironically, I feel like my mum, who we probably thought wasn't the most resilient, has proven over time that she is the most resilient. But I think I found a resilience in myself that means that nothing can hurt me unless I let it. And I say this to patients all the time, that, like what you've built up in your life, whether it's in a relationship, whether it's financially, whether it's in business, whether it's with friends, nothing can penetrate that unless you let it, and so I'm such a strong believer in that you can't ruin my day. I can let my day be ruined, but I'm not going to do that, So that's the way that I've always thought.
Do you use getting cancer at 23 as almost a fire in your belly to accomplish what you want today?
Yeah, do you know, I mean, I wish it was as poetic as that. Like, I think it's not necessarily something that's happened automatically, but I think you're right. I think there's not a day that goes by that I don't think about it, because there are still, health issues as a result of it, which you have to deal with on a daily basis. So, I do still feel like, it's a big part of my life and who I am today. But I try not to let it affect me in a negative way. And I think that it can only be a source of strength for other people if you use it for that purpose. Like, I feel like, I've got friends who always make fun of me. They're always like, oh, let me guess, you've told them the cancer story, as though it's a kind of like a sympathy thing. And obviously I know they're joking. We're very fond of each other, but like it's something which I think if you used it for emotional gain, then I think it's something different. The truth is that nobody chooses to have cancer, so however you choose to deal with illness is the right way for you. I remember when I used to go for my chemotherapy every morning, and I was lucky that my older brother was with me at the time. My mum was there as well. My dad was at work. My younger brother had started medical school. So every day I had somebody with me, and I remember going to this waiting room, and I was waiting for my chemotherapy, and I'd see a guy who was sat there. And obviously he had cancer because he was there, but he was always by himself. And I tried talking to him a couple of times, and he wasn't interested in talking at all. And I realized that, you can try and be positive, try and be but for him, his way of dealing with it was to just be alone. And that was the right way for him, rightly or wrongly. But it's his right to choose. But sure enough, after a few weeks, he stopped coming, and I found out that he passed away. So I think that having support and having people around you is such an important thing, part of any illness, really. But I think particularly when it comes to things like cancer, because there's such a rhetoric around it, there's so much kind of, so much publicity around it. And the weird thing is that for some people it's a horrendous illness. I'm not saying that it's not, but it's sometimes a bit of a slow burner in the sense that it's there, you have several months of treatment, surgeries. So you have time to become accustomed to it. Whereas there are some illnesses, or some accidents that happen in instant, kind of people lose function or people lose a limb or whatever. And I feel like that's in some ways harder to deal with for people. But like I said, I don't think there's a playbook really that tells people how to behave when they're ill. I hope you guys haven't been ill, but if you have, I guess, or if you do get ill, you'll find a way to just deal with it. And that's where I think the resilience part of it comes through. So yeah, I think there's definitely a fire in my belly from being ill, but I think I use it more to help other people rather than it kind of affecting myself, because I've made peace with it a long, long time ago. And I feel that now it's a good starting story. And it's been probably the kind of spine of why I think that our offering is the best that it can be for patients, because I've been ill, I've been sat there when things haven't gone well, and now I'm in a position to put those things right.
That's so beautiful, man.
Thanks, man.
There was something that George Janko, I don't know if you know who he is, but he's got a podcast, and there was something that he said on his podcast, which feeds into exactly what you were just saying, but there's a dog chained up in the light and a dog chained up in the dark. Which one lives? It's the one that you feed, which is exactly that. It's like you were feeding the dog in the light, being optimistic.
Yeah.
That's something that just stuck with me.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great analogy. Actually, I've heard of him. I haven't heard of the story, but I think it's whatever finds you positivity and kind of solace at that time. So again, whether it's physical health, whether it's mental health, we all go through stuff, and I don't think I'm any more special because I've been through it. But if I can use it for a positive, to make sure that people kind of take that on board when they're facing their own struggles, then I think it's got to be something worthwhile sharing. I don't really understand, and again, it's people's rights; they can do what they want to. But if you've been through something like that, to keep it to yourself, I think would almost be a disservice to society. I think that when you're dealing with the public, I think that the public need to feel that they're able to relate to you and that you're able to relate to them. And the only way to do that is to be 100% authentic and yourself.
We spoke about obviously purpose to do with obviously cancer having a bit of an effect on a fire in your belly, etc. Away from the business being purpose driven, so you doing this to genuinely help people, which is obviously something you're trying to do. What are some goals that you have from a business perspective with growing HarleyDoc? Yeah,
really good question. I think that there are so many facets to it. I think that the fundamental offering has to be that it's a healthcare concierge service for individuals and families. So that part of it will never change for me. So we really want to be that kind of doctor that patients can come to 24/7, 365, wherever they are in the world. And if people allow us, to do that deep dive into where they're going, where their second homes are, third homes are, then we can make sure that we set up the ties with clinics that we need to. I can fly out and see any client when they need me to as well. But I think that what we're really trying to do with it is create a kind of legacy for kind of healthcare and almost a blueprint for how services should change. It's quite a big kind of target, quite a big goal, because it's been so set in its way for such a long time. But there's lots of people who are trying to modernize healthcare, and we're very keen to work with anybody who can help improve our offering as well. We feel that having multiple clinics around the world helps. So we've got now the offices here in London and Harley Street. We've got Dubai, Monaco. We're opening in Mumbai later next year. It was later this year. Now it's going to be early next year. We're going to look at the Far East. So we just had a meeting last week with Hong Kong. I was talking to Singapore about some options there. I told you guys here I'm flying to China at the end of this week. And we've just signed a contract to partner with a group of clinics in America. So across both coasts, so New York, the Hamptons, I think Washington, Miami, LA, Santa Barbara. So it means that where a lot of kind of, people go for holidays or have their second home, that we can care for them as well. So I see our growth as being potentially, exponential in terms of being a presence in, big cities around the world. Every country, if we could, would be amazing. But we also want to take people with us. So if you look at the kind of health professionals who are around in any country, they can become part of the HarleyDoc kind of service, and we can include other clinics. We can offer a white labeling service for our app. We can work with occupational health services. So we can really work at every level. But probably the bit which for me is the most exciting part, which I'd love to get more into. The problem with this is that it's the slowest burner, is to work at governmental level. So because of the simplicity of the app, all that you need is a mobile phone. You need to have, a camera, which all mobile phones do, and be connected to the internet, which everyone is. Because that's all that you need to have the app. It means that you can access healthcare from some of the most remote and rural parts of the world. One of my dev team lives in a city in northern India, but his family are 2-3 hours away in a village, and there's just this expectation that they will die 15-20 years younger because they don't have a doctor, they don't have a hospital in their village. It means that whenever they have a health problem, they probably ignore it and just carry on. And so think about what the app can do for a community like that. It could potentially look at people's kind of health at a much earlier stage and diagnose risks or blood pressure or high cholesterol, whatever it might be, and make sure that they seek help at the right time. So that for me is the most exciting part, that you can literally
see the smile on his face when he talks about
trying, man, I'm trying, but yeah,
there's something so amazing with that for me, that you're oozing with happiness when you speak about affecting these people in a positive way.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's something which I'm really, really passionate about, because I think that, I think that if you think of what society should be judged by, do we live in a civilized society? I think that there's a couple of questions. How do you treat your elderly, and how do you treat the most vulnerable in society? And I've got to say, I think in the UK at the moment, we've kind of got that balance a bit wrong. I think that there's so much that can be said for society that looks after its kind of vulnerable people, and healthcare is a big part of that. So I feel that the reason I'm passionate about it is because I've seen what can happen if people have access to healthcare early, and what happens when people leave it too late, And I was lucky, man. Like when I was ill, I was literally in the nick of time. I think it was about 1 millimeter from invading my bladder, and so that would have been, a very, very different story. So I feel that everything's on a fine margin, and if people can get access to healthcare at a time which is appropriate for them, then it just makes dealing with it much easier as well. There's no point in waiting until the horse is bolted before you try and shut the gate, and it's something which we're really, really kind of, very passionate about, but also we can do things about it. So we're in the process of setting up a scheme. I may have mentioned this to you. There's a professor of homelessness at UCL who we have been working with, and he's got lived experience of being homeless. I'm not breaching any confidentiality in saying that. So we're going to set up a service for where we offer the app to homeless people on the streets of London. So we'll probably choose a cohort of 50 or 100 people, give them the app for free, because one of the biggest problems as we're approaching the colder months now, people don't have access to warmth, they don't have access to shelter, they don't have access to food, they don't have access to health services. So these fundamentals that we all take for granted, they don't have access to at probably the most fierce time of the year. So we feel like if we can give them the app for free, let them use it, we can identify health problems that they've got, but also then direct them in a really prompt way to the right medical service. Obviously, there's no charge at all for them, but it's just something which we feel is important to give back to part of society which is so in need of it. I don't get, you've come to London today, and I live here and work here, and I think that there's so much good here. I just can't understand how the homelessness issue has not been tackled. I just find that a remarkable stain on our society, right? Like it's weird how we still let that happen.
I feel like it's everywhere though, isn't it? Is it just a case of the guys that are at the higher level just don't care?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because they've obviously got the resources to fix it, right?
Of course they are. It's just not a priority.
That's probably the best way to put it.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
so
not at the top of their priority list.
So yeah, so we kind of really believe very passionately about, you know, those kind of causes, because it's something that we can actively be a part of the solution for it. So yeah, we're going to set that up hopefully this side of Christmas, and you know, I'm going to try and work with some of the, you know, bigger patrons. You know, I know Prince William is, you know, doing a lot of work with the homeless people at the moment. We'd love to try and coordinate something with them. I just need to try and get in touch with their office and get them to return an email, you know. But again, if you have people who've got that profile, that kind of stage, then I think it's really important that we kind of, you know, try and use that to help the public.
Tony, from a business standpoint, you mentioned that you're looking at moving into working now with governments. For me, as an outsider to your business looking in, and as a business owner myself, how do you even get into the position to be able to have these conversations? What email address are you reaching out to? Is it a LinkedIn profile? Is it a friend of a friend of a friend? Or
do you know, over a period of time, I think you just become very well connected. I've always loved the kind of networking and social side of life. You know, whether it was via rugby, whether it was through work, whether it was through my old school friends. You know, you guys are obviously very close friends, and we have the same circle. And I read an interesting thing the other day. It was saying that, you know, guys are a bit strange. Like, we make our group of friends at the age of 12 to 15, then think, yeah, I think I'm done with that now, you know. And it's so true. Like, women don't do that, right? And so I've always felt like very sociable from that perspective. When it came into kind of business, so the medical industry is a very small kind of world, you know, anyway. So you end up knowing friends of friends and people. And over a period of time, that becomes a much bigger circle. But really, I've always felt that you just have to keep knocking on a door. Eventually, somebody will come and open it, you know. And there are so many people who get nervous about contacting so-and-so. I guess whether this is the approach I've always taken, whether it's going to talk to girls on a night out, whether it's a job interview, the very worst they can say is, no, get lost, you know, and maybe in more colourful language. But, you know, nobody will ever say that. Usually, if it comes with a rejection, there's some sort of feedback that you can take from that. Or, you know, like, for instance, if you go for a job interview and you weren't wearing a suit, or you go for a job interview and you said the wrong thing, like, with those bits of advice, you can change for the next time. So I just feel that what we did is we targeted from a very early stage who our key customers were, ranging from, you know, I don't know, just to give you examples off the top of my head. Let's say you wanted to target the extended royal family, or you wanted to target film stars, or you wanted to target sports people. You know, you have to start at every level of that. So I could write to David Beckham and say, hey, I'd love you to become a member of HarleyDoc, and he'd probably ignore it because he's got much better things to do. But if you target his EA or his football club or his kind of PR agent, then these are all different routes to do that. So this is how I've learned.
So interesting that you say that, because the conversation we had with Khalid, he's a very, very successful entrepreneur now who lives out in Dubai. But before, he used to actually do robberies, right, in the UK.
Yeah, yeah.
And he always used to rob ATMs. And he said when we were robbing an ATM, we wouldn't look at the ATM. We'd look at the buildings to the left, to the right, above, below. And that would be our point of entrance to get. So the same way that you've applied it now, David Beckham being the ATM, his PA, his football club, his friend of friend are the guys that you go to first to then try and come in.
No, exactly. I mean, I think that it's something which I kind of had an idea in my mind about how to target these people, and so what we've done is we've actually been working with a network of kind of EAs and PAs who look after, you know, some very high net worth people, some very well known celebrities, and we've tried to kind of get in with them and incentivize them to, you know, ask their principals to join, and, you know, it's worked well. It can always work better, and again, you just have to keep on kind of knocking on the door. And I feel like because the offering is so straightforward, we're not trying to kind of fleece people out of money. We're not trying to kind of you know, offer something which isn't there. What you see is what you get, and like with the app, it's so simple that anybody can use it, and it just means that, you know, people are automatically drawn to it, I think, because of its simplicity, and that's hopefully where I want to keep it. I think the thing with businesses is that people try and complicate it. People try to kind of become a more, kind of a refined version of who they are, or they try to mix in different circles. I think everyone loves authentic people. Like I am born, brought up in Yorkshire. Parents are Indian, born, brought up in Yorkshire. I moved to London about 10, 15 years ago. There's no point in me pretending that I'm from Knightsbridge. It's not me. I don't fit in with that kind of society in that respect. I can be friends with them. I can, try and kind of go there for dinner, and I can go to go to Harrods, but I don't live in Knightsbridge. It's not me, and it doesn't feel comfortable. So there's no point in me trying to portray that. That's where I think a lot of people go wrong.
I think that's one of the biggest problems with society today. It's very much how can I fit in rather than being your true self.
Yeah. You think all the people who you aspire to know, meet, be friends with, like people who you see on kind of the big screen, they're authentically themselves. I don't know the guy, and he may be a lovely guy, but let's take someone like Conor McGregor, right? I love UFC, all right? And if you look at the way that Conor McGregor was when he first started, he always had this kind of sheer ability
to not give a fuck.
Yeah, he really did not. He really did not. And what's happened over time, he's hung around with the kind of, I don't know who I can give as an example, but people who've got the shiny watch or the Lamborghini or this or that, and he's become more drawn towards that. And you see him now, and he's like walking around like Liam Gallagher off Oasis, and you think that's just not you. Like people go off people because they're no longer authentic. And if he stuck to the plan and did that well, then his fan base, I think he had the potential to absolutely change like so many people's lives. And I feel like he's just gone a bit too much into that kind of materialistic.
It's literally the guy that had nothing and was just so disciplined and so hardworking and so dedicated to his craft.
When you see like some of the old clips of Conor McGregor, you get a little bit emotional. Like when he speaks about the dream and the what everything that you wanted. Whereas now it's changed.
Partying is for the weak-minded, and he's like this. I don't, and then it's like flips to him a couple of years later. He's like, ah!
And have you seen that thing where they got him to apologise? And he goes, "What did he say? Something along the lines of, I've come on stage today. I just like to apologise."
Yeah, absolutely nobody. Absolutely nobody. The double champ does what the fuck he wants.
I absolutely love that, man. I mean, that is just so
That was
funny.
him at his peak, though.
Yeah. I think
he just beat Alvarez with the most seamless performance. The combination to knock him out as well. Double champ. Like, that was him at the top of his game. At the top of his game.
Did you see, what was it? The Roadhouse. Sorry, I think.
Yeah, I think it was pretty...
It's terrible, wasn't it? Like, for such a good franchise... I feel like he's totally kind of, I mean, he came on, he was just a lunatic in that film. I know he was playing a role, but you can kind of see that's kind of him in real life, though, But yeah, I think authenticity speaks volumes. Like, everyone loves the rags to riches story. Everyone loves the kind of working class hero. What you find the people who get the least sympathy are the people who are, the kind of rich boys and, kind of, royalty and this kind of thing. They have it tougher to some extent because the only way you can go from there is a fall from grace, and they're always having to keep like appearances. For me, I think the best thing about being, from a working class city or having a working class background or, being a normal person is people don't expect anything from you. And so your story will always be more impressive because you were authentic at the beginning of it. If I sat here and said, that I'm a multi-billionaire's son and, of course you're going to do well. If you don't do well, you're an idiot. How can you not do well if you were born into privilege and money and education and this? So I always say to people, people always say to me, they're like, your mum must be so proud, like you've got 3 sons as doctors. I'm like, that's the least we can do. Dad worked hard. Mum brought us up, put us through private school. We went to medical school. Like, if we didn't do those things, coming from the background that we're from, I would want to be asking, self questions. Like, why didn't you do that? So I think there's, we were saying earlier, like discipline comes in different forms, isn't it? It could be, diet, nutrition, exercise, whatever it might be. But it's also about education and how you conduct yourself, And I think that I feel like that carries much more weight than what car someone's wearing or what, I think the example I was talking to you about the other day was that, these guys you see wearing like £400 Givenchy t-shirts and this kind of thing now. Mate, I honestly can't understand how people can spend money they haven't got on clothes that just look the same as anything else, advertising somebody else's brand, and there's no advantage to it. Like, it doesn't make you look better. It doesn't make you pull girls better. If it does, then they're the wrong kind of girls. Yeah. Like, I just think that this is crazy how materialistic society is becoming now. And I'm lucky that we were at a time when we went to uni, generally, there have always been designer labels. We weren't able to afford them necessarily. But I do look at it, I think that it was simpler. You'd go to wake up in the morning, put on a hoodie, pair of jeans, go to school or kind of med school. No one would ever think, oh, he's wearing Gap and he's not. Whereas now people have this thing in their mind about what looks good and what's right. And look, each to their own. It's not for me to tell people how to spend their money, but I just think that society's got its priorities wrong, in some ways.
I was that guy, though, a long time ago.
We all fell victim to that.
Yeah. Kind of similar to you, how you obviously fell with cancer at 23, etc. My old man, he ended up having, he fell quite ill. And before that, I was 17, 18, just started working in the family business, as did Chris as well. It was very much like, let's go out on the weekend, let's spend like a few £100, get the bottle, nice t-shirt, like designer t-shirts, wasting money on stupid things to get... Dream. Yeah.
I get it.
At the time, we thought we were.
To purely get validation from people that, quite frankly, I don't care about. Yeah. I couldn't give a flying fuck about them.
Yeah.
But it's almost that issue in my life which kind of made everything. I didn't care anything. I didn't care about anything apart from my dad getting better. Yeah. And I had this paradigm shift where clothes don't matter. The watch, the jewelry, the car. Like I didn't care about anything, and it's like I had this realization that okay, life is about more than just what other people think of me.
Definitely, and I think there's levels to everything. Like I'm not saying that people shouldn't spend money buying a nice TV or a nice watch, or everything in moderation. I think is absolutely fine. I remember, my dad was really into like Sony, the brand Sony. So when we were at school, I remember we had Sony TV and a Sony Hi-Fi with like a multi-CD player. I thought, oh mate, this is the best of the best. And I remember going to uni and one of my mates was a real, I think they call audiophile. People are really into their music and like this big, and he spent like 10 grand on a sound system, which I'd never even heard of. And he could afford it. He didn't buy it out of debt or anything. That was just what he was passionate about. But I remember thinking, oh yeah, there's definitely levels to this game. And like whatever level you try to increase yourself to, there's always going to be another level which you want to then aspire to. I think that's really healthy if it's in education or business or mentorship or whatever. There's some really positives to that. But if it's about me graduating from wearing a Armani t-shirt to a Givenchy t-shirt, mate, it's a piece of cloth with 3 holes in it. Like, no matter what the label says on it, that's not going to make me feel better about myself. And if you think it does, just try it. Go and spend the money once and let me know how much better you felt wearing that. Did you feel any more confident? No. People are spending money they haven't got to buy things they don't need to impress people they don't know. And that's just bonkers, man.
I think a big corporate for that would be the social media.
Yeah,
and the social media environment that a lot of people are only showing on social media, the highlights, the good stuff, the wins, the new t-shirt, the jet ski in Dubai, the 5-star restaurant and 5-star hotel. And it makes the people that don't have that stuff feel like they need it to not maybe fit in, because we know that these guys are the elite, quote unquote, but to have a chance of impressing the girl. Well, if I'm seeing it, the girl that I really, really like is also seeing it. Of course. Which one's she going to pick? Yeah. I don't have that. I don't have that. I don't have. So then you get this kind of fake it till you make it model where people are spending money that they haven't got on the Givenchy tee with 3 holes in it. Yeah. Because they think they are closer to the kind of person that maybe they aspire to be like, or I think it comes from a lack of confidence as well.
Yeah.
I think.
I've had the pleasure of spending some time with some very, famous people, well-known people, and honestly, they've got the same fragilities and frailties that you and I have. What I think social media does very well is it masks people's kind of insufficiencies or deficiencies, I should say. Like, if you're not comfortable outside of those clothes and cars and stuff, then you're never going to feel comfortable in them because actually, once you're in them, you get a lot more undue attention. You've all seen videos of the guy with the Bugatti who somebody took the moped took a hammer to it. While he's put himself in a position, sadly, where his head's above the parapet, and that's when the vultures come looking for you, man. I've never had any problems with anybody up until the point where you become more prominent, in society. That's when people start to then really think, why has he got that? Why does he do that? Why, it's a really, really dangerous thing. I think that social media is the catalyst for it. I think there's always been an element of it, though. But this is why your choice of friends and your kind of family upbringing is so important, right? Like, if you're hanging around with people who tell you that, their T-shirt or their Moncler coat is the best, I'm talking about a coat here, I remember when I, not so long ago, picked up a new car, and this guy came running over from like Hyde Park, and he'd just been attacked because they were trying to steal his Canada Goose jacket. And he asked us where's the nearest tube station or whatever, and I just told him. I thought, bloody hell, like, people are stealing people's coats nowadays, right? Like,
it's insane.
Mad, isn't it? Like, maybe it did happen when I was younger, but I certainly don't remember it.
I mean, you can correct me if you think I'm wrong as well, but the people that we used to look at and aspire to be like in the Givenchy or in the Moncler, more often than not, are the guys that are doing okay, but are trying to show everybody that they're really, really doing well. And more often than not, the guys that are doing really, really, really well are the guys that just look like you and me.
Exactly.
The guys that are wearing the plain tee.
Just go under the radar, man.
Yeah.
Like, it's
they don't have anything to prove to anybody, right? They don't feel the need to have to prove to anybody because they're the real deal.
Yeah, it's the slickest way. I'm a member of a private members club down here called Soho House, and I don't know if you've heard of them, but they've got kind of multiple houses around the world, and they get a bit of a bad rep. I like them because it's relatively like affordable. They've got multiple homes around the world, so whenever I go somewhere, I can usually treat that as a place to go and socialize, take clients, whatever it might be. And when you go there, I think they have it might be under 30 or under 27 membership. And so it kind of attracts a lot of younger people, which is great. Like, I'm all for that, and they should pay less than us. But what you find is there's a bit of a kind of fashionista kind of culture that goes on there, where people are kind of dressed in a more designer wear than usual, and I just think like it's fine. Maybe I was like that. Maybe it was so long ago that I can't really remember, but I don't ever remember it being used to identify who I was. Like, there's certain jeans which you'll wear because they're a better fit or they wear better or whatever it might be. They're worth spending a bit more money on. I get it, but I just can't justify my head spending £1,000 on a pair of jeans, which are eventually going to get holes in. I just think it's money which I've never been comfortable spending. And I think that another reason, going back to why I think we've done well in business, is because I've taken that mentality of not being overly flash to kind of business. I think it's really, really important that you live within your means, there's no point in me trying to kind of portray, an air of somebody who I'm not. Again, I think it'll probably push clients away from me rather than draw clients to me.
Well, we spoke about it. I mean, when we were talking about HarleyDoc and how you guys can kind of improve your marketing side of things, and having the flashy, sexy, really, really well edited and really well lit up and really crisp videos on social media aren't necessarily going to gain you guys trust, right? It's going to possibly do the opposite because it comes across flashy. Exactly. It doesn't come across as the guy that's here to help. No. But if you are your most authentic self, and you lift up your iPhone like everybody else and say, "Hey guys, it's Tony here. Today's tip," and people are going to resonate with that a little bit more and be drawn towards you. It's the same. It's the same thing.
No, I think I told you in that same conversation about like my kind of nervousness about social media. I think that what's great about you guys and your generation is that you're very comfortable in front of camera. You're very comfortable doing these videos, and it's really a case of the more of them that you do, the more comfortable you get. And one might not hit the spot, and another one really will hit the spot. And I think it's great, and we all need to learn from that kind of mentality, because the way that I look at social media is that everything I ever put out there, and it's sporadic, as I've told you, it's probably preceded by this few seconds where I'm like, oh, I don't know if that sounds right, or will people think I'm arrogant, or will it come across wrong? Am I hitting the right, like, the truth is that nobody really thinks like that, right? Who are comfortable with social media. They just put it out there, and if someone likes it, they like it. If some people don't,
I'll be honest. There's times where I think like that if I'm about to post something, or it's very normal. But when I started nodding at you when you said nobody seems to, and I thought you were going to say give a shit.
Yeah.
Because they actually don't.
Yeah,
nobody's going to look into your video with as much detail as you will.
It's true.
And
it's
if
true.
you know within yourself that I'm putting this out with the purest of intentions to help somebody learn something, to entertain somebody, or whatever it may be that you're trying to put it out for, just press that post button, man.
Yeah. No, I think that's a really positive way to look at it, and I totally agree. And I think I'm kind of getting better at it, but I think it comes with being from a generation above, in the sense that we just weren't brought up with that, and so anything that we do, and social media is for whatever anybody wants to do with it. If it makes them feel better about themselves, and that's great. But I've not tried to be a kind of putting my car and my this and that on there. Like, I know some people thrive off stuff like that, but we've always tried to be just under the radar, and kind of, I think there's a coolness that comes with it. But I think also when it comes to business and you're doing something right, you should be shouting from the rooftops. And I think that there is a word of mouth that we obviously enjoy, and that's great that people will tell their families and stuff. But it's not rapid growth if it's word of mouth and families. So I think we definitely need to have a kind of be more kind of vocal on social media, because again, I think what you said is right. It's like, we're doing the hard work, and if somebody can benefit from that, then we should put it out there.
Yeah. Out of curiosity as well, having a doctor on the podcast, first one. What are some of the top health tips that you could give to people at home to maybe improve their health instantly? Something that they could start tomorrow. Yeah,
I mean, to me, one of the biggest ones, and the thing that most of us get wrong, is sleep. So if you look at your relationship with sleep, I've been somebody who has always been a good sleeper, probably quite a deep sleeper. But if God's given me a gift, it's that I can sleep anywhere. Like some of my friends
sound like my old man.
Yeah, I know, man. I mean,
I'm just picturing Tony dozing off in the chair there.
I mean, I think I've always been like that, even from when I was a student. So I've never felt that kind of sleep has been an issue. But what I have found, I've noticed, is that this concept of sleep hygiene. So, in years gone by, people would read a few pages before they go to sleep. It tires their eyes, and then they go to sleep, right? Now what we're doing is we're watching box sets and action films and looking at our phones until later. So you're awakening your eyes, you're awakening your mind, trying to get to sleep. Actually, it puts it off longer. But the thing which I always say to people is that if you split your day up into 3 blocks of 8 hours, so you have your 8 hours of sleep, which none of us really get, you have your 8 hours of you time, which none of us really have that, and you have 8 hours of work, which is usually more like 12 hours of work, right? If you look at your day like that, if you're not having a good time of it at work, it doesn't just affect your 8 or 10 or 12 hours of work, it then affects your home life. So you might come home and argue with your missus, you might argue with your family, you might not do the things that you said you would do that day. Then what happens is you worry about stuff, and then it affects your 8 hours of sleep. And think of that cycle over a period of a day, over a week, over a month, over a decade. Suddenly, you've got the most massive backlog of sleep, which you have not caught up on. I don't know when the last time you guys had a proper lie-in was. I can't tell you. Maybe when I was on holiday last year, I can't quite remember. But when you literally go to bed at 11 and you don't have to get up until 11 or 12 the next day.
I can't remember it, actually.
I've had opportunities to, but I don't really find enjoyment out of it. I'd rather get up and get outside.
But that's a good sign. So, I think you're probably well rested in yourself.
Yeah, you're not sleep deprived, though.
To be fair, I think I was last week. To be fair, I organised a couple workouts like real early in the morning, so I had to get up maybe 40 minutes earlier. And I found, I think you came into the office and you were like, H, man, like you seem a bit like tired or down. I can't remember. I was just absolutely shattered. And it genuinely really affected my day.
Yeah. And what was the reason for it? Like,
just purely because like I made a commitment to people that I would meet them at a certain time. And I'm someone that I like my word to mean something. So I made sure that I was there for both of those things. Yeah. But then that night's sleep, the one after, I kind of corrected things.
And I think we can all, obviously, we're never going to have a kind of an orthodox, boring life where we do the same things every day forever. I mean, I get it that there's things that come in the way of that. I've noticed that, for myself, that my working day is no longer protected. So I'll be waking up at 5, 6 o'clock in the morning, doing a call with Beijing, then doing my day's work, meeting guys doing a podcast with you, then I'll meet my accountant in the afternoon, and then tonight I'll be on a call to Mexico City at 11 o'clock at night. Like, my work-life balance has got worse because of work, but I think I've got an eye on a bigger prize. Like, for the time being, I think that that's just how it has to be for now, for me to get to where I want us to be, and then I can kind of think about improving that. But for a long period of time, I've really protected my work-life balance. Like, it was the most sacred thing to me. It's probably why I've, maybe not physically, but mentally I've kept young. I've kept young because I've always made sure that I've got my sleep in. And the thing is, you're going to have your, kind of Saturday going out drinking with your friends, and, I do it. Everyone should enjoy that kind of stuff. But then the next day is a bit of a write-off, and then I'm fine by the Monday. And I think as you get older, you kind of realize that those things are quite important. So I think sleep's definitely a big one. But in the same way that I was talking about our model of being like a hub and spoke model, where you're the client, I'm your hub, and then all the spokes are our specialists, whatever specialists you need to see, we can arrange it. I feel like if you put you as that hub, all the different spokes that feed into you, they can be sleep, they can be hydration, they can be nutrition, they can be exercise, they can be, your kind of mental state. All of these things feed into that. And you can maybe do one or two things wrong, but if you do all of those things wrong over a prolonged period of time, your wellness suffers as a direct result of that. So I sometimes think that people try and overcomplicate stuff, man. Like, I don't know if you're, so into your kind of workouts that when you go to the gym, you're like pre-workout shake, post-workout this. And obviously, there's a lot of people who look a lot better than me physically who do it and swear by it, and that's great. But I think that there's some things that are just so much more simple than that, Like, we're overcomplicating what is a very simple relationship that we should have with ourselves and our bodies, is that you drink enough water every day, you make sure you have healthy, nutritious, balanced meals every day, don't skip meals, make sure you get your sleep. If you do those three things right, cut down your alcohol, cut down your stimulants, cut down coffee, don't do drugs if that's what you're into. Like, these things are very basic things which sound
common sense, really.
Like common sense, but we all ignore them. And over a period of time, I can tell you, like, I know people from back home where I'm from, every single week is like Groundhog Week for them. I know where they go on a Monday for what pub quiz. I know where they go on a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday pub, Friday out for dinner, and then to the pub. Like, they have the same thing, and they've been doing that for 20 years. And it's great. Like, it's good for me because when I go back home, I can know where to find those people to go and say hello to. But I just think that from a kind of health perspective, it has to take its toll. It has to. Yeah. Like, we're only here on this mortal coil for a number of years, and I think that unless you start doing the basic things right, it doesn't matter what pre-workout you have. I mean, if you're not having a good 6, 7, 8 hours of sleep every night, eventually it's going to catch up with you. And I think that what we're finding out more and more with health is that, like, you could argue at the age of 23, when I got diagnosed with cancer, what was wrong in my, diet, honestly, I've probably never been fitter. Like, I was playing rugby to a high level. I was, working really hard. I was going to the gym. I was, eating, drinking, like, kind of sensibly. And it happened. And I guess it's like a point mutation. And you could argue, was it something that I ate? Was it something, environmental? Was it that I never really had a job until I became a junior doctor? So suddenly I was like overwhelmed with 100-hour weeks and stuff. I don't know what it was. And the truth is, there's no point thinking about it because it doesn't really bear any fruit. But, I think illness has a multifactorial cause to it, and I think that these are the things that we can do now and make sure that our wellness is much better for the future. So, the way the NHS, going back to your earlier point as to how it works, is that the NHS waits for people to fall ill. So it waits for my dad to have his stroke. It waits for somebody to get, kind of like a heart attack before they then say, oh, now you need to stop smoking, stop drinking. Again, that horse has bolted so long ago. So what we're very much focused on in HarleyDoc is targeting people who are the younger population.
I've always, growing up, I've always said, like, something that would be amazing to do would be to find a way to make people aware of this, like, at school. Yeah, like, I don't understand why things like proper health, like whether that's nutrition, sleep, and all these things aren't taught in school. Yeah, it's something that kind of frustrates me a little bit.
Well, you know what it is? So the reason why I mention it is because we're very much focused on the primary prevention. So we are good at the early detection, the early intervention of illness. So what we do is we look at people with that scan that I showed you. We can look at people's risks of developing high blood pressure, diabetes, high cholesterol, fatty liver disease, and we can preempt what your risk is in 10 years' time. So if I know that now, at the age of 20, let's say, then I can stop drinking for the next 10 years. You know, like I can do the right things or drink in moderation. We also look at your risk of developing, heart disease, stroke, heart attack in the next 10 years. These are all metrics which I think are so important about the disease prevention. And you're right, if you think back to your bad habits, let's say, or things that you could do better, often those things are forged at school. So if you look at how you ate as a family, I'll give you an example. We always had pretty much, Indian and Western food, but home-cooked food every day. We'd come back from school, Mum would cook, and we'd eat. And I never really had a takeaway. I know it sounds ridiculous.
What a luxury.
Yeah, we never really had takeaways. We'd go out for a Chinese meal, maybe for someone's birthday in the family. But apart from that, we were just having home-cooked food. Then I went to uni, and the wheels fell off, man. I was playing rugby. I would go out after rugby and drink 6-8 pints and then go for a kebab afterwards. And it becomes almost like a reprogramming of the way that you were. And I was unconscious of it. I was consciously doing it, but I was unconscious of what it was doing to me, because we don't always see changes every day, right? But I wonder whether it was something dietary perhaps that changed that may have caused the things that went on to lead to bowel cancer. I don't know. All that I'm saying is that I think that we're brought up in a certain way, and it's important that we continue those things. For instance, if you're brought up in a house where everyone smokes, there's a huge chance that you're going to smoke. If you're brought up in a family where dad drinks, with his mates every single day, you're going to be an alcoholic. Or there's more risk of you being an alcoholic. I think these are things that once we recognize them and we're not ashamed to talk about them, then we can do something about it. So, when I was up north, I was the chairman of the local NHS. So it was a really great role, leadership management role. And I was responsible for the expenditure of a huge sum of money, £530 million for a population of 300,000 people, which seems a huge amount of money, but it evaporates within the NHS. And I remember we were talking about kind of health awareness and this kind of early intervention type work. And I talked about how it's important to get to kids. Like, if all you're having is fish fingers and frozen food every day, then don't get me wrong, I'm partial to a bit of frozen food once in a while. But if that's what you're having every day, and there's no thought that goes into the beige food that you're having on a plate, for some people it's money related. I totally get it, but it's also going to affect your kids' nutrition, right? So I decided that what we'd try and do is have like a health literacy scheme where we'd go to schools, talk to people at the age of 7, 8, 9. And so we set this up in the city where I'm from, in Yorkshire. And I remember going there, and obviously we're all into our sport, right? So I was talking about, and one of my friends from back home, you might remember him, was a guy called Luke Campbell, who became a professional boxer. He won gold at London 2012. And so I remember going with him, getting him in to talk to people in the schools and stuff, and he'd come in and talk about nutrition and exercise and boxing, and it's great. He was amazing. I remember this girl saying to me, "But doctor, we don't like sport." And I was just like, "Oh, sorry, I hadn't really thought about that. What do you like?" She goes, "Well, boys and girls all like music." And I was like, "That's actually genius. I'd never really thought about promoting health through music." Because we're thinking rugby, cricket, football, boxing. We're thinking these are things that, I like, so why wouldn't somebody else? I think we underestimate young people. I think kids have got some of the brightest ideas, and we tell them to kind of shut up or not listen to what they're saying. So we did. We basically did this. I remember it was like a concert of local kind of bands, and they were promoting kind of safe sex and contraception messages, or stop smoking things, just really, really cool stuff. And I think that that's actually the more important part of health and health prevention, is targeting the younger people. Because with the best will in the world, if you're 70 and you're still smoking, there's almost no point in me stopping you smoking, because your body's learned to deal with it in a certain way. In fact, I saw a client on Friday, I think it was, and she'd stopped smoking at the age of 70, and she's never been more ill, literally coughing up so much phlegm the whole time. And you think to yourself, okay, it's great that you've done it, but I wish you'd done this 20, 30 years ago. You'd have really seen the benefit then. So yeah, it's it's fascinating. People's health-seeking behavior, people's kind of relationship with certain stimulants, with certain kind of risk factors is very interesting to watch. And it almost always comes down to how things were at a young age.
I think it's a good place to wrap up, my man.
Cool.
I've thoroughly enjoyed this episode.
Have you enjoyed it?
Yeah.
One of our
Really,
most
really
impressive guests, I think.
Oh, bless you, man.
Genuinely.
That's really kind, man.
Well, yeah, you guys, thank you so much. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, turn the bell notification on so you get notified every time we release a podcast. And we'll see you all next week.
Guys, thanks for listening. Love.
Peace.
Fantastic, guys. Really professional, man. I love it.